I am tired of it, man. I'm just fucking tired. In case you haven't kept up with the stupid world of liberal bullshit, we've all been suffering through yet another round of hand wringing from professional managerial class libs this week, who are sort of clutching at their pearls like little old racist ladies, white knuckling their purses, every time a black guy walks by them, because AI is coming for their precious sense of intellectual superiority. Oh no, the machines are making it so other people can be creative now. The plebs are making art and they don't need to pay me a stupid amount of money for my skills. How will I feel special if a neural network can do my job better, faster, and with less whining? Seriously, cry me a fucking river, son. You were never that special to begin with. What we're seeing here seems to me to be the same old song and dance from the petty bourgeoisie, right? The class that Marx and Engels eviscerated in the Communist Manifesto. Communist Manifesto. Sorry, I can't talk. For just their pathetic and useless attempts to hold back the tide of progress. Let's just read the passage real quick, because these reactionaries seem to be under the impression that Marx wouldn't tear their entire life to shreds and then piss on the pieces, and that somehow they're communists. I don't know, which is, stupid. Of all the classes that stand face to face with the bourgeoisie today, they write, the proletariat alone is a really revolutionary class. The other classes decay and finally disappear in the face of modern industry. The proletariat is its special and essential product. The lower middle class, the small manufacturer, the shopkeeper, the artisan, the peasant, all of these fight against the bourgeoisie to save from extinction their existence as fractions of the middle class. They are therefore not revolutionary, but conservative. Nay, more, they are reactionary, for they try to roll back the wheel of history. Sounds a little bit familiar, right? These PMC liberals, the journalists, the mid-tier academics, the creative professionals are just the modern American form of petty bourgeoisie, screeching into your ears about how AI is dehumanizing art, man, and writing and all stuff like that, because they can't stand the thought of competing with the machine. But here's the thing, right? AI isn't just out competing them, it's exposing how flimsy their claims to expertise really were in the first place. You spent years gatekeeping good taste, right? Acting like your overpriced MFA made you the arbiter of culture, like your bloated think pieces in the Atlantic were the pinnacle of human thought. And now a fucking diffusion model can generate better visuals than your entire graduating class at RISD. A large language model can churn out prose that's just as hollow and pretentious as your latest op-ed, but it can do it faster and it can do it for free. And what's their response? Right? AI is theft, please. Don't give me that shit. As if your entire career wasn't built on regurgitating the same sad old takes that the rest of you middle-class drones spout on endlessly, but with, a fresh coat of jargon or new font. AI lacks soul, dude. Funny, because I don't remember your corporate-friendly LinkedIn posts having all that much soul either, I don't know. AI is doing to intellectual labor what the Industrial Revolution did to handicrafts, right? That's what I really want to tell them. It's making your scarcity-based superiority obsolete. And Marx understood that dynamic perfectly, right? The bourgeoisie didn't weep for the feudal lords they displaced. Fuck no. They steamrolled right over them because their mode of production was objectively superior. And now AI is doing the same thing to the parasitic part of the so-called knowledge economy, right? The PMC liberals are really just the latest reactionaries desperately trying to roll back the wheel of history because they can't accept that their cultural cachet is being devalued by a force more powerful than their fucking screenplay. Here, however, is the beautiful part to me. AI is proletarianizing them, or rather it's, reproletarianizing them. And I mean, I just love that. Their fancy credentials won't save them. Performative wokeness won't save them. The market don't care about moral posturing. You're either going to adapt or you're going to end up homeless in the fucking gutter. Because guess what? The proletariat is not afraid of AI. We embrace AI because we can see its potential. We see AI as bringing art to the people. No more having to waste years and going to debt to learn how to paint pretty pictures. Instead, we can press a button and we can get 30 options all at once. And that's just, the very tip of the iceberg. AI can reduce the workday and the work week. It can make our jobs easier. And when we add in the fact that it's the ruling class of the current system consciously holding this stuff back in order to continue its parasitism, well, it's kind of easy to see how these PMC so easily align with them on everything. But in the proletariat, we got nothing to lose but our chains. Meanwhile, the PMC are having, some kind of existential crisis, right? Because ChatGPT writes better cover letters than they do. So, you know what? Keep whining, libs. Honestly, keep lobbying for ethical AI regulations that just so happen to protect your dying profession. Keep pretending you're defending human creativity when what you're really defending is your own rapidly diminishing status. History is moving on without you. The machines will not stop coming. We will steamroll you like the bourgeoisie steamrolled the old mode of production, and we won't look back. Because frankly, I'm just sick of the whining. Get a real job. Because we can all participate in art now, and we don't need to wear, scarves inside or glasses without a prescription to do it. Welcome to the fucking future. It belongs to the working class.
Hi, Sheriff Hazard is a... Hi, Sheriff Hazard is a hard man to be. High Sheriff is his only plan. He digs through pockets, takes what he can, for he's High Sheriff Hazard. He caught me one evening, and here's what he said. You look like a Russian, you look like a red. And if you're fond of your skin and your head, beware the High Sheriff of Hazard. word right out on his ear. Farewell to her, Sheriff Hazard.
Uh-oh. Look who's with us tonight, everybody. Eddie came to steal my show again, but tonight I'm not letting him.
What's up, folks? I'm here to beat Noah's ass and take his show.
You can try, son.
How's it going?
It's going great, brother. Thanks. Thanks for coming. Always fun to actually be able to do a stream with you like the old days. And welcome everybody to Noah's show. Tonight we're doing a new sort of format. Rather than doing Discord for talking with you guys live, we're making it an X space. So hopefully we'll sort of branch out and hear from more people. What's up with you, Sebastian? How you doing tonight?
I'm doing good as well. Yeah, hopefully we'll get some new callers, get a bunch of new people in here. And I just had one thing to add to your opening rant, and it's like, just think practically, right? From our perspective, without AI, what would we be able to do as a party and as a production team? Put out way less and way worse quality stuff. I mean, it just levels the playing field. We don't have the infinite money that the ruling class is to play with, so this is only going to help us.
Right, that's one way to think about it. It levels the playing field in terms of technology, and like CapCut is amazing now. So it greatly increases our production value, but it is unfortunate for people's lives, like people who are graphic designers and stuff, that they're going to be thrown out of work. But this is the effect that automation has under capitalism, something that, if you're thinking from the perspective of society and humanity as a whole, we should all be cheering on the advancement of technology and AI, because it's going to allow us it's not only going to allow everybody to create art and have more, skills at their fingertips, as Sebastian was saying, but it could alleviate the total workload that we have to do as a species in order to reproduce ourselves and create a social surplus. Even though I guess art, isn't really part of the actual social surplus, which is why they're not proletarians. And what this AI is going to do is sort of proletarianize them, throw them out of work and into the proletarian class, and show them the necessity of socialism, which goes to show how the development of the means of production eventually put pressure on the relations of production and cause people's consciousness to wake up to how irrational the relations of production are, which is why it's reactionary to fight back against the evolution of this technology. And it is sad, but it is sad in some ways for people's individual lives, but it only happens like this because of the capitalist relations of production. That's why automation throws people into unemployment instead of liberating humanity. So, it's not a moralistic thing. It's a historically materialist thing, looking at the development of history and where we're at currently.
Yeah, precisely. I said it already, right? This is sort of the wheel of history moving. You know what I mean? Like AI is going to effectively reduce the necessity of so much labor. And the people who are reproletarianizing, they're fighting against this, no matter how they see themselves, right? No matter if they see themselves as a communist, even objectively speaking, materially speaking, what they're doing is fighting against the wheel of history turning, meaning they're just what Marx said, right? They're reactionary. They're trying to claw something back that is already lost, in a sense, right? They're trying to go backwards to this day before AI existed. It's here now. And it's making our lives easier, even in the limited way it's already doing so, right? So the idea that we should limit it, that we should put in, restrictions, just seems, silly to me, unless we're talking about, like, let's not have the robots from Terminator happen. In that case, I'm all for Terminator. Well, maybe I'm not all for Terminator not happening. maybe I kind of want Terminator to happen. I don't know.
Yeah, and to add on to what Eddie said, it depends entirely on the context, right? Like under capitalist relations, it's obviously going to be terrible. It's going to throw people out of their jobs, reproletarianize them. But China, under socialism, this automation only has the capacity to liberate people, to get them to, do things like this in their free time, because it's going to free them from the amount of work that they have to do during the week.
Yeah, I think here's the interesting thing, and this is going to tie into the first thing we're going to get into tonight. That Eddie and I were very excited to go over. It really, really. I mean, we can change that if you want, Eddie. We can do this one.
Do what?
We can do this.
Oh yeah, there you go. That's way better.
Yeah, I had it. I had it on
the
that
side
one.
of the screen. I'm like, what's going on?
I had it on that one because I thought you were going to share the Jordan Peterson.
Oh,
thing.
I will.
I will
once we started. But
I'm a complete amateur. I apologize, everybody.
It's all good.
But like, it really speaks to and I talk about this all the time, so I'm sorry if I sound like a broken record. It speaks to the misconceptions and falsifications about Marxism that just accrued in our society over the last period of history, right? And we're going to be getting into those briefly when we get into this Jordan Peterson on Joe Rogan video we're going to be reacting to. But I really wish people would just learn about stuff before they speak about it. Life would be so much easier if they did that,
Well, you wouldn't have Western leftists, so.
No investigation, no right to speak. Great quote.
This Doug has a great question. You keep saying reproletarianize, but what happens when factories and workshops all around opt to put AI in those fancy robots they're building and replace factory workers too? Very good question. We want that to happen. We want to be able to work less, right? And we're getting to a point where that's the only option. So what does that lead to? Like, what conclusion does that force us to draw? The only way forward is communism. There's no way to do this in capitalism. It is specifically fettering the forces of production. It can't do that, right? The way capitalism works cannot just replace labor entirely yet.
It
right?
would.
It just can't.
I mean, think about it practically. Like I said, those jobs are very, very far from being automated. China's doing a lot of it with like, what's that car company that's now competing with Elon Musk? It's like BYD or something like that. I was looking at a video of their factory today. It's like almost fully automated, but they're consciously investing in that. So Doug says that's what they were saying about code jobs, like a year before AI comes out, that code won't be able to be automated. But code is intellectual labor, which is much different than physical labor. And for the capitalist class, in order to advance those kinds of technologies, it would take like a massive investment in constant capital that they're just not going to make, because they're just trying to keep their profits as high as possible in the here and now. So that's why China's kicking our ass in terms of automation. But in China, like, the retirement age is going down. It's not throwing people into unemployment. It's allowing them to work less. But that just is because they have a planned mode of production.
Yeah, it's also in part because these people, a lot of the times, politicians, CEOs, they think in the short term out of necessity because they have to get reelected. They have to maintain the consent of the board. But China can think in 30 years, long-term periods, so they can actually invest in the future of their country rather than prioritizing short-term profits.
Keep going, guys. I'm setting something up.
Okay. I will just go ahead and pull up this video then, so we can get into the reaction before we open up the call lines. I thought I was sharing my screen. I don't know where it went.
Yeah, you're not in the space yet, by the way, Eddie, but you don't need to be. Anyway, yeah, let's do that. You are sharing your screen, but I have this stuff all set up. We're gonna do it this way. All right, now you can go for it.
Let me pull up the video.
See, I'm very not smooth tonight. I apologize. I'm kind of off my game, honestly.
Have you tried smoking crack? I wake you up.
No, I haven't, but I do have this awesome new coffee mug that's doing its job.
All right. Nice.
Oh, I got it.
Why is my screen? Oh, there it is. All right, you guys ready for this?
Let's do it, brother.
Let me turn the speed on 1.25 so we can hear Jordan Peterson talk about Marxism.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
That's what Adam is called upon by God to do in the story of Adam and Eve, to subdue the world, subdue everything in its proper place so that the whole structure operates in a harmonious manner. It's a much more expanded view of what constitutes mental health. Anyways, education should serve that, right? And so if you take the staff of Moses.
Yo, can you pause it real quick, Eddie?
That's
You bet.
What is with this corny jacket he's wearing?
Yeah, that ass. What is he?
Is that like a Catholic jacket?
Yeah, it
Or
looks like
a
it.
saint?
I think it's like a bunch of saints on his jacket.
Bro, it's like somebody your 80-year-old Catholic or something your 80-year-old Catholic grandmother wears.
My lord. My lord. I'll be right back, guys. Keep going, please.
the same as the magic wand of Gandalf. That idea of a magic wand. It's the traditional ethos associated with transformation and sacrifice around which communities aggregate themselves. And a proper humanities and religious education inculcates that center structure so that knowledge can be organized around it. The last time we talked, I suggested to you that we see the world through a biblical lens. Literally see it. I mean, literally, it structures our perceptions. And I've investigated that far more deeply. And
He seems a bit
that
too
seems to be
amped.
the case with a corpus of
Yeah, maybe this was when he was still on the pills.
Didn't he only eat meat for like a year or something?
Yeah, he was on carnivore. He was like turning red. He's like, I feel great. Yeah, that was after he quit. I think he was addicted to benzos, which had to be rough kicking that.
Yeah.
of stories like the biblical library is that if you know the stories, it structures your psyche so that you have a place to put information. And so that enables you to understand the current world and everything that's happening, but to place everything in the right context. And so the transmission of an unbroken cultural edifice, story-based edifice, is the manner in which you solve the alignment problem.
He uses he could explain this much more simply, the argument he's trying to make, but he's in a way making an argument against postmodernism in the idea that there should be no meta-narratives. And he's saying we should have like a understanding of our history as like a narrative leading up to now. But he's saying that should be the Christian narrative. We should look at things through the lens of, the Bible and the resurrection of Christ and stuff. So, pretty stupid. I mean, just to take because Marius said, there's a lot of wisdom in the Bible, but like these stories weren't even meant to be taken literally by the people who wrote them. In a lot of cases, they were meant to be, there's parables and stories, and there's usually a good lesson at the core. But I don't know if they really wanted people to believe that somebody survived in the belly of a whale for 40 days straight, and that, we need to understand that as a real part of our historical development.
I think it's interesting to me how many people go on and on and on about following the Bible and how, everyone should be this religion or that. Yet I've been studying this stuff a bit recently, and they seem to ignore all of the Bible's actual teachings, right?
Isn't it that one line about the camel and passing through the eye of a needle? Like it's
it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's he wasn't saying that like, oh, just because like God hates rich people. No, saying it because of the life of a rich man and how he has to achieve that wealth, right? I mean, the entire philosophy of Jesus Christ and the Gospels is giving, right? It's a life of service and community and duty. And Marius is correct here. Like, Jesus would absolutely be called a communist by present right wingers because he was. I
Yeah.
mean, very, very simply.
And I think I saw Eddie mention this, but isn't that why they funded Protestantism in South America? Because Catholicism naturally led to, you know, more socialistic ethos and ideas.
They did a big campaign against liberation theology. I don't know if it specifically involved funding Protestantism, probably because they were counterfunding against the popular liberation theologist priests with their own priests, which Protestantism is, as you said, a religion that parallels capitalism. You know, even the emergence of Protestantism in history as a, you know, theology was right when capitalism was overthrowing feudalism and you know, the actual political power of the Catholic Church. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if they you know, indirectly that they pushed Protestantism while they were murdering all the liberation theologist priests and trying to stamp out left-wing Catholicism.
Not surprising. I want to answer a quick question from the chat. We don't even need to pull it up. Someone said that Jesus wasn't a communist because he condoned slavery. Really has nothing to do with communism. Those are the economic structures prevailing at the time. For instance, Mao Zedong, one of the most famous communists of all time, wanted to make George Washington from the 1776 revolution a posthumous honorary member of the Communist Party of China. So communism isn't about morally condemning things like that and just saying they're bad, right? It's about real world action and real world progress, right? And understanding the connection between what is and what becomes. Anyway, you can keep it going. Sorry, I don't mean to ramble.
Unite your society, integrate your psyche, pursue what's meaningful, and protect yourself from chaos and anxiety. So, and solid education has been the traditional way of ensuring that occurs. And so, well, that's what we hope to offer with Peterson Academy. That's the focus of the books as well.
Whoa.
Let's not invest in education. Let's not get more teachers. Let's not get money out of like the textbook industry and corporations out of education. Everybody just join Peterson Academy.
Peterson Academy?
It's like they talk about structured education and they push creationism in the textbooks.
He just like went full like full grifter. He like hit the whole grifter checkbox. All right, time for my red pill alpha male pyramid scheme courses.
Fuck.
Oh man.
Elucidate that. And so, can the universities do that? I don't think so.
I don't know if they have that philosophy. The philosophy and the way you're laying it out resonates with me. I think it's accurate. I think it when I'm in harmony in my life, that it all seems to make sense. It all works together.
Mm-hmm.
What you're saying, it just rings true. I don't know if they're so infected with this ideology that flies in the face. They
rejected it wholeheartedly. Is that there's no uniting meta narrative. If you had to define postmodernism in one phrase, that would be it. And so what have they done? Here's the association with Marxism. Okay, so the Marxist.
Here we go.
And the problem is like they're not necessarily wrong about the fact that the academy system can't necessarily teach you the right stuff, but it's like that's why it's so effective what they're doing. They're drawing on real rational kernels that exist, you know.
Right.
Exactly.
And then giving you an answer that makes them money. How is the answer always, well, if you buy my new book?
I got a new course. Yeah.
You know, like, $3,000 to Peterson Academy.
And I mean, speaking of drawing on rational kernels, we'll get into this more in a sec, but when I watched this video at this point here, the 3-minute point, I already knew what he was about to say. When he said postmodernism and Marxism, he was going to draw on the French theorists, the Frankfurt School people, the people who have been exposed as essentially CIA assets and plants who distorted Marxism and try to turn it into radical liberalism and postmodernism. So he makes the connection here in order to strawman Marxism and then knock that strawman down, which is all that he ever does, which is why it was so unfortunate that the only big Marxist he's debated is Slavoj Žižek, because he's one of the people who does that shit.
Right.
have a counter narrative. It's the narrative of power. And it is a very powerful counter narrative, because if you don't put the proper uniting principle.
Okay, stop already.
Power emerges.
Stop already. No, Marxism is not about the narrative of power. That sounds like the postmodernists. So it sounds like Foucault, right? Internal power dynamics between individuals. The problem with Foucault is that he begins in the middle, right? Fully formed individuals having relationships. He doesn't understand how we get there, right? And really, it's very anarchisty and fascisty, but that's a whole nother bag of bananas. Go ahead, Eddie. Sorry.
No, you're good.
Immediately, because people play power games, and
Right.
you can attain a certain degree of success and a fair amount of domination by playing a power game. And so Marx observed that one of the cardinal power games is economic, and it is probably the cardinal power game, right? There's economic disparity. Those at the top do take advantage of their position at the top to stabilize their position. Like in a functional society, productive people are at the top, but even among those at the top, they're still power-seeking crooks.
Stop.
Now, Marx, of course.
No, this is not what Marx observes. Marx observes that there is a fundamental contradiction within how society is reproduced that had to develop, right? Out of the old, we get the new. That it's an ongoing process. It's not about fully formed people being mean when they're rich and powerful. No, it is not.
Absolutely. And I mean, he's talking about power and oppression, which is one thing. I mean, it's something that Marx looks at, but exploitation, which is what the ruling class does to the laboring class, is different. It's material, it's objective. It is how they control the surplus of society. Society produces what it needs in order to reproduce itself, and then there's a surplus which is controlled by the ruling class, and that's how they accumulate, is through that exploitation. And this is what Marx looks at. He doesn't say there are bad people who are in power because they're bad people. It's not a moralistic thing. That's something that he's reading into it, or not even reading into it. I'm sure he's never read Marx.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they try to say it's incidental, but if you took the richest billionaire, or any billionaire for that matter, and just changed his mind and had him become the nicest person in the world, he just wouldn't be a billionaire anymore. Someone would replace him. Someone would, he would be outcompeted.
Look, capitalism is one thing. The MCM circuit, the development of the MCM circuit, the realization of real concrete value. All of the book Capital is explaining how this comes about and how it functions. And through that, he elaborates his entire worldview, which has nothing to do with anything Peterson's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, would say that, well, everyone who's economically successful is a power-seeking crook. And, that's a great thing to believe if you're a resentful Satanist like Marx.
Well,
and so,
No. Again, no. It's not a moral judgment. I just explained it to you. They objectively control the surplus, and I know capitalists who are nice. I know bankers who are nice. It's easy to be nice when you have all this wealth and money, and you live in luxury, and you don't have all the financial stresses that the proletariat has on them. Makes it real easy to be a nice person, a nice guy. That's why Joe Rogan gets along with Peter Thiel and Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk and all these oligarchs. But it doesn't change the fact that they have their own interests, which are directly contradictory with the interests of the proletariat. I mean, even mathematically contradictory. The less they pay their workers, the more profits that they make, the more money that Wall Street makes. And now, because of the stock market, you don't even know your boss. It's like a nameless, faceless corporation that doesn't give a shit about human life and is going to suck as much out of you as they can, or lobby the U.S. military to commit horrific mass murderous invasions in order to expand their profits, essentially control more markets and resources. So they can be as nice, or you could think whatever you want about the morals of the capitalist class. It doesn't change the fact that their interests are directly contradictory to those of the vast majority of society, and that they're running our country into the ground.
And this is what I cannot stand. what was I saying earlier? Like, why is he acting like he knows the first thing about this? He's like going on and on about Marxism when it's so painfully obvious he has no idea.
He was on drugs.
Well, it could be drugs.
Literally, he was on benzos. I'm sure like part of that is to give himself false confidence, to mask the fact that he knows deep down he's a fraud.
I would not be surprised, brother. I would not. Look, Marx spends an entire section in Capital explaining how the capital accumulation process is not theft. It's not gambling or a night in Vegas. Everything happens according to the rights within society. Like a capitalist accumulates through ownership, and that's no one's stealing anything, right? I don't get where this comes. Like he just makes shit up. Like Marx thought capitalists were all crooks. No, he goes out of his way to explain that is not the case.
Losers look at the world.
Well, that's for sure. But there is some just.
That's how losers look at the world. That's how people who didn't get a development deal from Disney when they were in their 20s look at the world. Yeah, sorry, Joe. Not all of us had our fucking career sponsored by Walt Disney.
Right?
He's so out of touch. I used to like the Joe Rogan Experience, but it's actually pretty sad to see what Joe has become.
How the mighty have fallen.
Among the successful, there are right, okay,
and a large percentage because that's the culture in which they're existing.
Yeah, well, a dangerous percentage,
yes.
And a critique of power is always a valid critique. Okay, so what the postmodernists do,
yeah, they are almost all sociopaths, though. Like American Psycho is such a recognizable movie for a reason because there are those American Psychos.
Because it's self-selecting for the people who can just turn off that part of their brain and just ruthlessly just take advantage of everyone.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Did when Marxism became ethically unacceptable, and that happened in the 1970s, is they metastasized it. They said, okay, we've got a victimizer.
Also not true. China. Counter argument, the 1.4 billion Marxists on the most powerful, soon to be most powerful country on earth.
Narrative that's played out in the economic sphere, that's basically Marxism. We'll just multiply that until the same interpretive framework can be applied to all possible group distinctions. That's basically intersectionality. So sex is versus oppressed narrative.
No.
He's doing the Frankfurt School thing. I told you.
Like, what is he? No, Jesus Christ. We just multiply Marx's critique of power to apply to different things. No, where do they get this idea from? It comes from fucking nowhere.
It comes
nowhere
from Derrida and Foucault and these weird people who call themselves Marxists. That's why it was such a powerful strategy. I'm always talking about this dialectic. You have the fake leftists who champion these people and say that they're Marxists. And then you have the right wingers who say, yes, that is Marxism. That's why you as proletarians should hate Marxism. No, it's radical liberalism. It's fucking CIA distorted nonsense. It's let's remove class from Marxism and apply it to gender and sexuality and all these different things related to identity politics. It's like, no, the second you said we're going to take the class away, it's no longer Marxism.
Yeah, it's a bunch of perhaps well-meaning, university students who read all this philosophy and then come to the conclusion that like the state is inherently authoritarian, inherently like oppressive, and it's the exact opposite of the conclusion you want to draw, and it just benefits the ruling class.
It's metaphysics. It's separating all of these things as if they're different. But look, the struggle against racism in the US is a particular historically determined form of the class struggle, right? It is a form working class people must of struggle that working class people must use against the ruling class, right? People aren't, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Oh, okay, scratch that. I don't share anything in common with Jeff Bezos because my skin color is the same as his, right? I don't. Sorry. My black coworkers don't share anything in common with Barack Obama because of their skin color, right? He is their class enemy. They have a struggle because they're working class, and it is a particular form of the black working class, right? Yeah, sorry, I'll try to stop that.
We're trying to break Noah of the habit of saying right after every sentence. So I've been counting. He's at 17 rights. Anyone was wondering. Or playing a drinking game at home. Well, if you are, you're now dead.
Yeah.
Sorry, no, I didn't mean to derail you.
It's fun. It's just, it bothers me that like they think intersectionality is somehow compatible at all with Marxism. If you know the first thing about the dialectic of universal in particular, you know that particular forms of universals are proof of the universal. Like it's always both. It's never one or the other.
Gender is an oppressed versus oppressor narrative. Ethnicity, race, ability, attractiveness, height. Any qualitative distinction is now recast as a battle between oppressor and oppressed. It's
the communists were against ability. That's why the Soviets kicked our asses in Olympic wrestling to this day, because they still have the Soviet system in place in Russia. But for the last 70, 80 plus years, that's why Cuba has all these gold medalists, even though they're a blockaded little island.
Look, you know why Marxism focuses on class and not ability and height and all of these nonsensical postmodern whines? It's because class is a symptom of a deeper contradiction within society, right? It's a reflection of the very way we go about being human, having some kind of contradiction within it, right? There is a contradiction in how our society reproduces itself, and it comes out as a reflection between people, right? MCM, remember what I said earlier? Money, commodities, then more money. That is what our entire society is built around right now. In order to do that, that splits us into classes, right? And there's leftovers of the old, and we were talking about reactionary classes, etc. earlier. But that is why we focus on class. It has nothing to do with power other than the proletariat, in order to continue the progress of society, needing to take political power.
It's an unbelievably brutal story. It's basically equivalent to the claim that the spirit of power is the ruler of the cosmos.
How can they do all this and ignore the possibility of an oppressor, like a male, adopting the identity of the oppressed of a female and entering into female spaces?
You can see
Joe takes everything back to trans people in sports. It's like his whole podcast now. It's like, we get it, dude. Nobody really disagrees with you about this in the country.
You can see that it can't be dealt with because
wild, right? That is wild.
Look, one of the things you see that's very characteristic of the utopian left is the absolute insistence.
The utopian left. You know, Marx and Engels should have wrote an entire book about how they're against utopianism and how there can be no utopian society and a new society has to be built from what's already been produced by the old. They should call it Socialism, Utopian, and Scientific, and Jordan Peterson should sit down and read it.
Nah, they would have agreed with the school.
Is a victim. It's like, okay, we'll give the devil his due. Some oppressed people are victims, but some people who claim to be oppressed aren't victims. They're the worst kind of monsters that the most deranged imagination could barely conceptualize. Utopian, naive, radical progressives refuse their imagination for evil, and that delivers them into the hands of the absolute bloody psychopaths. Right? And they just don't see it. It's like, oh, those trans people, they're just striving to be free. It's like, you wait until you have one of them in your house, buddy, and you're going to find out.
This guy's fucking manic.
You are. You just wait until you wake up next to a trans person and you thought you slept with a beautiful woman and you look to your right and you see a bearded man next to you. This is the future the Marxists want for us all. Oh my goodness.
So So how do they protect themselves? They just deny the existence of malevolence or attribute it to socioeconomic inequality.
Right.
All criminals are victims. It's
Right.
like, no, first of all, lots of people who are victims aren't criminals.
Not the same argument. He just inverted the argument to instantly strawman it. Someone who says all criminals are victims in a way. No, not all victims are criminals. What? That's a complete. What does that have to do with anything?
In fact, poverty does not cause criminality. That's a lie. And it's a very damaging lie to the poor. Because
Right.
if poverty was equivalent to criminality, the logical thing to do is just to lock up all the poor.
No, dumbass. The logical thing to do is to lift them out of poverty. You idiot. And I mean, Marx, in his critiques of the lumpen proletariat, this class that capitalism creates, he calls them social scum. He sees them as people who rob and exploit the actual proletariat, the people who, you know, wake up and work in draining, exploitative, productive jobs all day. So he condemns the lumpen proletariat, but also to say that that class is not created by poverty and capitalism reducing everyone's material conditions. Of course it is. You think people rob liquor stores for fun? I know that you and Joe Rogan have been rich for a really long time, so you're almost unbelievably out of touch. But people rob stores and commit crimes usually because they don't have any fucking money.
Because there's no other option usually.
Right.
And look, like, don't get me wrong. Engels was even like more horrible. He called them the lowest of all social scum, and he was congratulating the Paris communists for shooting them on sight, for hanging signs that said that thieves will be shot, right? But just like talking about whether or not someone who's a criminal is a victim of something ultimately doesn't matter. If you want to solve the problem of crime, you need to remove the conditions that creates it, which is poverty. Like, you can't get around that. It just is, right? Therefore, we need some form of society that doesn't create a relative impoverishment between people in different classes, right? As the bourgeoisie gets richer and richer and richer, it becomes harder to maintain the other end because they're literally getting their money from parasitism now, right? It's not even like the old productive bourgeoisie. It's literally taking money out of the economy, taking value out of the money in our bank accounts while it's just sitting in the bank doing nothing. It is getting worth less and less and less as they compound their interest rates for speculation and more debt, right? So they borrow money in order to start some enterprise or invest in real estate, which is collateral to borrow more to do it again and again and again and again and again, right? And when they do this, the bottom eventually falls out and we have a crash. But that's neither here nor there. The point is, the form of society we have right now creates poverty. Worse, it is creating reproletarianization. The middle class is gone, which is why we see the spikes in crime, right? Why we see the spikes in suicides and depression and anxiety. It's not just, big pharma wanting to get us addicted to drugs. That's there too. It's because there is no longer a future for working American people. And it's people like Peterson who pretend that arguing endlessly over whether we call criminals victims or not does something that are the problem.
All right, just a little bit more here.
Let me, sorry, I need to rant for one more fucking second because this bothers me.
Okay.
It's everything with these people. It's everything. They don't actually think about solving the problem because for them, the conditions as they are now is static. It's stuck in time. It will always be this way. It just, that's the way their logic goes. But it's like, and I say this metaphor all the time, or analogy all the time, rather. It's like taking an ibuprofen for a headache that you got because you have a brain tumor, right? One, that ibuprofen ain't gonna cut it. Two, even if it did, you still have a brain tumor. You're going to continue getting headaches. They're going to continue getting worse. And eventually you're going to die if all you do is take ibuprofen.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of moralizing about the headache, try to figure out what's causing it.
Which
Fucking A.
that's actually that's the way the whole healthcare system operates.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
It's a reflection.
Right.
Right. Well,
Right.
there are many pathways from poverty forward, and one of them is criminality, but you can say the same thing about wealth. So the idea, and that's basically a Marxist theory of causality, it's like, well, those people's oppression is what's causing their lack of law-abiding what conduct. It's like, no, wrong, seriously wrong, and dangerously wrong, and ridiculously naive. That's not how the world works at all.
Right. You're right.
Not how the world works at all. The people like me are supposed to have the money. What do you think? You think we should lift people out of poverty?
He doesn't
Wrong.
think the
No,
world
my
works
money.
if you eliminate people's poverty, they commit fewer crimes. What does he mean?
In a way, what he's trying to say is a very subjectivist view, that we all have free will and we're just making rational choices all day, every day. But when he does that, he forgets that every choice everyone makes is within a context,
Mm-hmm.
right? And your actual concrete, realistic avenue of options is always limited. People who get the big breaks that Rogan and Peterson both got don't find themselves in a position where they're contemplating whether or not to rob someone. They just don't.
Mm-hmm.
So to act like it's just always a choice on its own is wrong. And it's just as wrong as like saying, oh, it's just poverty that does this, right? It's everything put together. It's also culture influencing the way we think. It's everything.
Yeah, I mean, who wants to commit a petty crime that can land them in jail for decades if they just don't have to, you know?
Precisely. And I'm pretty intimately familiar with how this works.
Mm.
I was a criminal back in the day. Like I was a really big scumbag. I'm 18 years clean. Like, and I'm very proud of the man that I've sort of built myself into. But I was in that position, right? Where I was contemplating and then carrying out crimes, right? And every single time, yes, it was my choice. I could have chose not to, but my limited avenue of options at the time had it so it was the only reasonable choice for me. And
Right,
yes,
I was in a
Alex, I was locked up for a while.
I was in a similar spot before I stole Noah's cat. The Patreon funds were down. There was nowhere else to go. And Noah bought this super expensive cat. After, this was in his dark days. He robbed the Patreon, actually.
Yep,
And used it to buy this cat. So I realized I had to steal it back.
Well, I had
agree
to look, Eddie. It was a rare French Arabian black and white cat. They stopped making those in the 70s.
I agree with everything that you said about Rogan too, except he probably is tempted to steal jokes from comedians who are actually good because he can't write any himself. Just kidding, Joe. I'm just roasting you. I'm gonna actually see Joe. Or I'm gonna go to the comedy mothership for a friend's bachelor party soon. Don't tell my friend who's getting married. It's a secret.
Pretty cool.
I'm glad I just announced it publicly, but that's probably all we have to cover with that video. It's that was the meat of the stupidity. They just ramble after that. But
The subjectivist critique of postmodernism that Peterson's trying to do is weak. Right? It's really, really, really weak because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Like what he's saying does not matter at all. The materialist critique of postmodernism is very strong. It's, guess what? Objective truth exists, right? It's the same sort of critique that Engels made, expanding on Hegel's critique of Kant and his thing in itself, the unknowable thing, right? So Kant was saying that this screen you're looking at right now, right? You're not actually experiencing that screen for what it is, but instead your perception of it. There is always a barrier. And postmodernism runs with this. They say instead of objective truth, There are instead competing narratives we tell each other, right? And they develop, and there's the Foucault power relation to see who dominates, blah, blah, blah. But what Engels says is, look, when we prove our theoretical knowledge, yep,
That's
true.
good.
When we prove our theoretical knowledge in practice, we are proving objective truth, right? So he gives the example of the madder root, and they used to make a red dye out of a tuber called the madder, right? But after they learned its chemical composition, chemistry, chemical science, right? They are able to more cheaply produce the same exact color with coal tar. They therefore took the, Kantian thing in itself and made it a thing for us, right? Our practical application of theoretical knowledge is proof of concrete objective truth. If it weren't for objective truth existing, my mom would have died decades ago. She would never have gotten a heart transplant, right? So Doug has a good one here. What a matter, Noah.
Mhm.
Sorry, I have a weakness for dad jokes. Anyway, that was crazy. Thank you for bringing that, Eddie.
You bet. I saw it last night. I'm like, okay, if I'm doing Noah's show tomorrow, he's got to see this. And
Yeah,
get a kick out of it.
unreal. All right, guys. So we got a new format we're gonna do for the live calls and questions. And if you got some beef and want to debate or some kind of chicken or other meat, I don't know if those are slangs for arguments, but you can chicken us with us too, I guess. Anyway, we're doing it tonight on an X space, which I'm going to get started right now. And we'll put the link in the chat and all over the
Is it going to be on your X or the Midwestern Marks?
We're going to do it on the Institute one because it's.
Are we able to do that while we're streaming?
Oh, yeah.
Time? Okay.
Yes, sir. I actually had one going earlier, but I decided not to continue it
I'm
because
going to run to the bathroom then.
they were only going to hear a few things. All right. The space is up. So why don't you guys get all in here? I don't know how to share. There we go.
I joined.
Excellent. And I'll make you an admin on there. Once I figure out how. No, I got it. I'm just kidding. So I don't know. Like Jordan Peterson kind of bothers me a little bit. You know what I mean? He like, I don't know. It's a very tired narrative that he has going for him, right? Like, he's been saying these same things about Marxism for years and has never ever listened to a single critique. I don't understand how you go for, I mean, what is it, like 8-9 years now since he began saying this postmodern neo-Marxism thing? How does he go that long without actually checking to see whether his complete guess is correct or not?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It kind of probably has to do with the existence of the continued existence of the Western left, right? Like, these are the people he's sort of talking about. They're the falsifiers of Marxism. And insofar as long as they're calling themselves communists, which they're not, he still has ammunition. So
yeah,
once they're relegated to the dustbin of history, he has no career anymore.
Right. None at all. It's wild to me how that happens. Like he's just done once he gives that up. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's, anyway, we got the space going now and we're live on it. So if you got a question, if you got beef or chicken or fucking tacos or anything like that, come, don't just gibber at me in a post reply. Actually try to make your case.
I'm gonna mute
Uh,
myself on the stream. Let me know if you can still hear me through the space.
For sure, of course, yeah.
Hello, hello, testing.
Yeah, you're good, brother. All right.
All right, cool.
Look at us doing the Twitters. Doing the Twitters, Sebastian. I'm stupid tonight. Don't listen to me, man.
Welcome everyone in the space.
You know what? This guy asked a good question. Can we start calling Western Marxism bourgeois Marxism? We need to, and I've always argued with Carlos on this. I refuse to even call it Marxism. I think it is absolutely antithetical to Marxism, and it's an insult to the only real inheritor of Marx and Engels, which is Lenin, and then throughout the rest of the history of Marxism, Leninism, it's an insult to all of that to call these anti-communist any kind of Marxist, right? With the party, we're developing what we call the Marxism-Leninism unified tendency, right? Which is sort of the acknowledgement that in different times and places, different sort of particular forms of Marxism, Leninism are come about, right? So Soviet Marxism and Leninism arises at a particular time and place, right? Mao Zedong thought arises at a particular time and place. American Marxism is arising at a particular time and place, right? So all of this adds up to the universal of Marxism, Leninism. That's all. I don't know. All right. So you're both co-hosts, Eddie and Sebastian.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good, brother. We are good. And it looks like we have people requesting already. Let's see. Let's get Fernando's requesting. You're up, Fernando. What's up, brother?
On the space, we can hear you fine, Eddie.
Okay, cool. Can you hear us on the stream?
I have the stream muted because otherwise I'll get you twice. Give me a second.
I
All
can
this
hear you.
technology, man. I don't know
If
how you
anyone's
kids
watching us
do
on
it.
YouTube, just let me know if you can hear.
Yeah, we can because
Okay.
I have the X space muted and I can still hear
Perfect.
you.
You sound great on both ends.
Okay, thank you guys.
All right.
Wait.
So
We have one request currently.
let's bring him up, Sebastian.
Racket Ralph.
Welcome, brother.
What's up, Racket Ralph? What do you got for us tonight? You gotta unmute yourself, my man.
Oh, now he's muted. There you go.
There you go. What's up, Racket Ralph? How you doing?
You might have to tweak your audio settings.
Looks
to
like a
make
dud,
sure
my
that-
friend. You gotta fix your audio.
Yeah. Come back when you're done. When you have audio.
While you wait for people, actually, Sebastian, I got a question, or maybe not a question, but a dialogue with you with something you said on the stream, if you guys don't mind. There was a question brought up about the history of evangelism and Catholicism in Latin American leftist history.
Yeah, I'd like to hear if you have some perspective.
The view that it was all financed by the CIA is a little what's it called? It's a little restricted because I actually come from an evangelical family, and at least here, I can't speak for the entire continent, but here in Chile, evangelicals were actually a big part of Allende's government, or at least his popular support, because before Allende, Chile was a nominally secular country, but it was very I don't want to say like Catholic supremacists, but like non-Catholic Christian denominations were definitely prejudiced against. So because Allende was such a staunch secularist, he actually enjoyed a lot of support from evangelicals, Anglicans, Pentecostals, Jehovah's Witnesses, etc. A lot of figures that now you would consider right wing, or a lot of denominations that now are like by the layman are considered leading right, were on his side due to the particular context. the financing for this of the CIA, rather than the CIA, it really is the NED. Is a newer phenomenon that started, if I remember correctly, in the 80s. But there's if you look at further back in history, it wasn't always the case.
When was there? I can't remember when it was, but I think it was before the 80s when they were doing. Maybe it was the 80s, though. You could be right. When they were doing, like the big line from the CIA document that became kind of a controversy was where they were basically, and I think this was even before the NED, when they were just trying to murder all the liberation theologists. Maybe that didn't start until the 80s. I'm getting the timeline.
That was more so, and as far as I know, a particular conflict in Nicaragua during the Dirty War there,
Okay.
where like there was a huge Catholic contingent that was very popular, very tied to the Sandinista movement to this day. And at the same time, Cuba and the KGB, actually, from the Soviet Union, were doing a lot of big efforts to influence the Vatican and the Catholic Church at large. I don't know to what extent it escapes Nicaragua. It definitely does. But that was definitely the catalyst. Like that was a response to the particular problem that that American imperialism was having in Central America. And you know, like when America finances these these murders, they're not just assassins, they're not just mercenaries, they're drug dealers, they're traffickers, they're human traffickers, they're an organized crime, and it spreads around, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. It's an interesting topic.
It really is.
Because they basically did the same thing in the Middle East as well, where they were worried about the rise of left-wing Islam.
There's a lot of connections between the Middle East, like the Operation Condor, and then the like black CIA black operations in the Middle East. There's a very similar playbook.
Is everybody scared to debate us, Noah?
Probably.
Or are all these people who are in my mentions all day long?
It's funny because like I am a very nice guy, yet people seem terrified of me.
You're a scary guy.
I don't know if it's like my voice, I smoke too many cigarettes, and they're like, look out, that guy is gonna eat me or eat my lunch. I might eat your lunch.
Remember, y'all, if you have a question, just request to speak and I'll get you up here.
I mean, I might eat their lunch. Oh, yo, the guy from that movie Homeward Bound is replying it to me right now.
Is he gonna get into space?
I don't know. He tried. Him and his buddy wanted to debate me, and then his buddy got real mad that I was busy and like couldn't reschedule with him. So he was like, he was like replying to me with a bunch of like silly libertarian dogmas that don't make much sense. And I was trying to explain like a real answer for him, and then he just got very mad that I like didn't have time to, take schedule some big debate with some guy who I've never heard of and couldn't care less about. You know what I mean? So he was you get finished. No, he just said bye out of nowhere because he was upset with me. Which I found funny. It reminded me of when everyone was saying bye Felicia. You remember that? Like everybody got called Felicia. So I told him like if he wanted to win, he just had to call me Felicia, but he didn't call me Felicia. I don't know why.
You know what's funny is every single time I've debated a libertarian, there's been a problem where they're like inflexible with scheduling. And it's like, why don't libertarians have jobs? It's just like a common thing.
Mm-hmm. Pretty funny.
Because they don't understand the real world.
They really don't. It's like everything, all of their entire belief system rests on thinking about things without the real world attached to it. Like everything they want to do is always necessarily detached from context. Like I was seeing that, what's that guy? He's like a popular Twitter influencer.
He's a
Sal,
libertarian.
the Agora guy, that guy,
Who?
Sale the Agorist, I think.
Oh, Sal the agorist.
Yeah.
I don't know how you say
I
It's
think
the libertarian thing.
I think it's agorista. I don't know. Agorista. Well, that's what we'll call him.
The barista.
But so he posted earlier today that they should legalize recreational fentanyl. That's the sort of
I
thing
saw
that allowing your thinking to be so clouded by abstract dogmas will get you to. Because what he thinks he's doing is advocating freedom, man. If you want to do fentanyl, you should be free to do it, man. But there's no
Also,
real world that comes into that, right? There's no real world that that he thinks about when he says that. Because in the real world, he's advocating slavery.
Yeah.
He's advocating people getting enslaved to a chemical. And it doesn't matter how he thinks about it or what lovely ideals he believes he's fulfilling. What he would create with that is a society of drug addicts. We've seen this. The opium wars in China, when they finally ended this, they were literally going around with trucks and putting corpses of the people who OD'd overnight onto the trucks to get them off the street. That's what you would have. People's families would be torn apart. Others would be, I mean, the idea that that's a...
Yo, we got a speaker request, by the way.
Okay, go ahead, bring them up.
I have, in for Ricky.
Emperor Wiki, what's up, brother? How you doing?
Wait, he dropped out of the requests. If you can request again. Oh, no.
Damn
there he is.
Hey, what's up? Y'all talking to me?
Yeah, what's up, brother? How you doing tonight?
Hey, I just wanted to hop in because I come from, like, I know a lot of libertarians, and I was at the debate where Haas was debating that libertarian, what is his name? Bouncy Ben?
Ben.
What's the guy?
Bouncy
Yeah, Ben.
Ben.
Oh, yeah, Prax Ben. Yeah.
Prax Ben, that's right. Yeah.
My stalker.
Yeah, I actually...
Let me cut you up real quick.
Go ahead.
How did you refrain from slapping him in the mouth?
Bro, I
After
didn't.
what he was saying to Kayla.
No, dude, I couldn't refrain, and I actually started a bunch of I started the Deng Xiaoping chant because somebody asked the question, hey, you guys like what China's doing, why don't we just do what China's doing? And it was a communist who asked the question. It was one of the New York chapter guys, and Ben was like, yeah, we should do what China does. And everyone cheered. The whole crowd cheered because everyone was like, the communists won, the libertarians won, everybody won. They just wanted China.
Real quick, Emperor Wiki, I'm sorry. We've had these sitting here for a minute. Tommy Lee, thank you for the $2. Communists today say all struggle is class struggle. You're right. Felipe, thank you for the 5, says God bless you all. And then we got a question from Alex. Says he wanted he co-hosts a show on Roku TV and wants me on. Send me a message on X or email me Noah Krachivik, mmi@gmail.com, Alex. We'll discuss it, or get a hold of Sebastian, and he'll set it up. Anyhow, sorry to interrupt you, brother. That was a wild debate. It's funny, they always fall back on the same tired arguments, you know?
Yeah, Ben's like a weird guy too. He's he seems to have gotten it over it now, knock on wood, but he was like obsessed with me for a while, and it was like rooted in his own social awkwardness and insecurity with his own masculinity. He's
Remember
very
that Seabass guy?
No, this is Prax Ben. He's strange.
Talking about strange people.
Yeah. He's just like basically trying to be a grifter and only succeeding a little bit. Like he hasn't grown much. He's
But
like
see, my thing is
trained by the Rand Institute and all these fucking grifter programs.
like my thing is I wish him the best because I really do want us to have stronger, smarter enemies. You know, it'd be awesome to debate like in good faith on a you know, spaces are kind of hard because it's kind of chaotic sometimes. But if you had like a studio where you brought in a guest who agreed to have a real discussion, then, you know, we could sit him down and we could talk. But it'd be crazy to talk to like somebody like Jordan Peterson or somebody, you know, if we get big enough. So I wish him the best, truly.
Yeah, I hope he actually because like another thing, when I debated him, I studied for a while. I read a lot of like the main theory and the agorist theory, if you can even call it theory, and I had a lot of questions going in, and I realized that just in the preparation for that debate, I had read more libertarian theory than Ben had himself. So I do wish we had smarter enemies, but you might be waiting with your fingers crossed forever for Ben to be that guy.
The wild thing about them, and here, this is always the case. They assume because they just read this one type of thing and believed it without question, they assume everyone does that, right? So what I said it. Sorry, I'll stop. But that's what they assume they do. To a man, they all assume that you're lying about having read other things and thinking critically, etc. They think you just read Marx and believed something, because if you look at Marxist theoretical texts and theirs, they're not the same type of book, not even remotely, right? Like maybe some of the like more philosophical von Mises stuff, but his is like really out there. And when I tell them, no, I've read Hayek, I've read von Mises, I've read, Spengler and all these other people, they're like amazed that it didn't convince me to be a libertarian, right? Like that guy I was telling you, the pig from the movie Babe, the actor that played him, his buddy wanted to like trade books with me to have this debate, right? So I'm like, all right, cool. And he gives me
I played the pig from the movie Babe.
That'll do, pig. That'll do. He gives me von Mises's socialism book, which I've read like 4 times, by the way. It's utter garbage. And I went through before I had to reschedule, and he, threw his hissy fit and said, "Bye, Felicia," at me. I began making notes, and I found on the first 91 pages, 89 pages with lies on them, like direct lies, right? And so he had to read a book of my choosing too. And I gave him one of what I think best explains what Marxism actually is from a philosophical foundation, which is Ilyenkov's doctoral dissertation. It's called Dialectics of Abstract and Concrete in Marx's Capital, right? Because Capital doesn't tell you what it's doing. It shows you. It shows you dialectical materialism by using it in action, and trust that you're smart enough to pick that up, right? So Ilyenkov is actually explaining that because it gotten to a point where that was forgotten in the Soviet Union. So I give him this and I tell him this will organically sort of myth bust all the lies you believed about what Marxism is by teaching you what it actually is. And I know you kind of think in this like very surfacey level reactive way. So it's on the surface, right? He's telling you what he's doing rather than showing you the way Marx does. And he was like, you said this would debunk Mises, and he doesn't even mention Mises. Like that's how shallow their thinking is. It's wild that people can't like actually think critically. They just need told what to think.
I wonder if we could use Red America to like maybe articulate like a real concrete criticism, because you're right. You kind of got to hold their hand and explain to them why the book debunks it, but also you'd be doing a favor to everybody else in the party who does interface with libertarians. It would arm us to be able to debate these people better.
I think
definitely. That's why I was so disappointed in the debate with Ben, because I had read the libertarian theory and wanted to actually discuss it, it would be fun, or, it is fun to discuss that stuff with somebody who has actually understood it. But I feel like Dr. Paul Cockshot probably understands it better than any contemporary academic, and he's a Marxist-Leninist. So
Well, I wanted to
Marxism almost helps you understand their theory better than they know it themselves. By the way, people request to speak. We had
Yes.
2 people requesting earlier, and they dropped out. I know it was a long-winded conversation, but
if you want
One
to
of them is
request,
no
like
wanna
just
discuss
interrupt
One of
us,
them got
guys.
accepted.
Like request and we'll get you on. Especially if you want like to argue with us or have beef or chicken. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah. That's like I'm always excited because I want to debate the real philosophy of it. Like von Mises isn't a stupid guy. He's just a subjectivist, and he lies about Marxism constantly, right? But I'm like, so I'm going into a debate with one of these guys thinking, okay, we're going to debate subjectivism versus materialism. And the only coherent materialism has to be dialectical. So Marxism, right? But they instead want to like come up with perfectly sort of isolated, self-enclosed ethical systems that they create
yes.
or read about and then compare them. They act as if Marxism has one of these, when it's like, that's like not even just comparing apples and oranges, but comparing apples and like the way the color blue looks on a certain night of the year. You know what I mean? Like they're just completely, wildly different categories.
Yeah, that's what when I actually debated Ben, he gave a long-winded opening statement that he was widely mocked for, and that was basically his argument, was that there's an objective logic and it's on his side, and therefore he's right about everything. And capitalism is objectively, logically, and morally, ethically good.
Right. Yet it's only the capitalism in his head. You know, who cares about the like world wars, the exterminations, and all
Right, the fake version, all that stuff is not real capitalism.
Real capitalism.
McGooberman.
And that's always, and you know what, Emperor Wiki, I'd like to like write a guide, not just to debating libertarians, but just talking to them. Because in real life, I win these people over left and right. Like, and it's more just like regular people who tell you they're libertarians, not ideologues and, like autistically obsessed people who just regurgitate Milton Friedman quotes all day.
I'm gonna write an essay on how to fight them physically. What's up, Kevin? How's it going? Welcome to the space.
Hello there. Thank you for having me on. I've been listening, about you guys ripping on libertarians, and I have some criticism to share about libertarians as well. One of the things I like about what RFK Jr. is doing is, he's basically telling all these corporations that you have to get all these nasty food dyes and other awful ingredients out of our food. You can't do that anymore. You can't make the same type of food, that same food over in Europe without the nasty ingredients. But here in America, you do the same food and it has those awful ingredients. And when you point that out, many of these libertarian types, they get really cringe and they're like, derp, 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 derp. That's big government. You can't do that. No, don't ban that. It's like, no, I'm sorry. I don't want these food dyes and sugar and seed oils and all these nasty ingredients that are making us fat, sick, diabetic, and so much more. I'm sorry. I don't want that in our food, and it needs to be banned. And good on RFK Jr. for doing that. And it's just a little I just get really angry and upset when I hear these libertarian types just get really cringe about, oh no, that's big government, free market,
If I could real quick,
no, it's like no, I'm sorry, just no.
A lot of those libertarians are actually cool with RFK and they're cool with cracking down on the food. It's just that they call this current system crony capitalism, and they believe that somehow a free market could regulate itself such that it's not producing poisonous food, which, as we all know, free markets tend to result in monopolies and corporatocracy, I guess, So it's interesting because a lot of them are pro those regulations. A lot of them are like granola, yoga moms, whatever. So it's very inconsistent.
Yeah, there's different kinds. I mean, the roots of that ideology, though, are dogmatic, medically anti-government, meaning, the reason that there's, sawdust being put in the bread is because of the government. And if we would just let the market work itself out and competition work itself out, we wouldn't have this. And it's the most utopian thing possible. It's ignoring everything that the capitalist class does, the vast majority of society, and then placing the blame for that on the state, which government. Is actually just a tool of that same capitalist class.
Precisely. Every time you bring up the fact that capital centralizes and accumulates and centralizes and accumulates, they hand wave it away by saying, you ever seen a monopoly happen without government? It's like, well, have you ever eaten spaghetti without a government existing? Like, what does
it's
that
so
mean?
dumb because competition, if I'm a capitalist, I want to win. So of course I want to become a monopoly. Of course I want to corner the market. Of course I want to buy up my competitors. It just doesn't make sense. That's the goal. Win.
Yeah.
You win the game if you monopolize the market.
Oh, long guy.
That's why free competition becomes its opposite, monopoly. That free competition, how do you win the competition? With a monopoly.
Precisely. And then the monopolies put all these disgusting chemicals in our food, and those are the only options around, Long guy, thank you so much for the 20. Says,
nice.
Lambeck guy said Lenin's views justify LB's position, but my question that he would answer is, since Lenin lived after most land was taken, if Lenin agreed, wouldn't he say people should give land back rather than praise the U.S. as revolutionary? I'm not sure I quite get what he's saying here.
Lenin
supports land back. Is that the question?
He's arguing with a land back guy.
Lambeck guy said Lenin's views justify Lambeck's position, but my question, which he wouldn't answer, is that since Lenin lived after most of the land was taken, if Lenin agreed, wouldn't he have said people should give the land back rather than praise the U.S. as revolution? So he's saying if Lenin was pro land back, why didn't he support land back? Because it was after Manifest Destiny and the indigenous genocide, all that, which is
And if he did, why would he have praised the U.S. revolution? Good question, long guy. That's the problem with these reactionaries that think they're communists in some way, is all they do is try to distort little tiny bits and pieces of Lenin or Marx or Engels to fit the bourgeois narrative that they actually embody and bring into as part of themselves, right? So it's definitely a good argument, but I think a better one is just to sort of look at the process of history playing out. Look, if we start giving land back, it doesn't ever end, right? We have to, at some point, understand that history has happened and there's no such thing as a time machine, right? We can't undo history. We can only address the needs of people in the present. So let's be real. The way the U.S. government treated Native Americans was barbaric, and it's a stain not just on our country's history, but on humanity itself. But right now, Native Americans themselves don't use this land back slogan. They don't want Europeans to all, worship them and work for them. They don't want this sort of racist narrative of the stewardship being better or something. They want things like treaties being honored. They want their own independence. They want different things in different nations, right? And when they treat them as this monolith, I mean, there's nations that are overwhelmingly pro-Trump. Like, when they treat them as this monolith, it's so goddamn racist. So I would talk about that and the lack of, time machines.
Yo, we got Tara in the house. How's it going, Tara?
Hey, man, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, what's up, sister?
Oh, I'm always happy when it works. Anyway, I just wanted to tag on to what when you guys were talking about capitalism versus what we put on capitalism, what we put on the state. We're talking about libertarians and how it's really impossible to separate out capitalism from the state. And when I've had conversations like this, I try to get them past it. They seem to be kind of stuck into like this Adam Smith notion of like, the baker, the butcher, the carpenter, and these kind of small scale economies, and they don't figure in, debt and finance and all that. But if you think about from the point of production to realization to distribution and all the stuff that has to go in for the circuit of capital to continue, that's impossible without a state. And also the idea that you need a state to be looking out for capital as such, which of course is going to involve picking sides against various sectors and scales of capitalist actors, or else the whole thing gets mucked up. And you need a state that kind of becomes as if it's separated from that, but it's actually part and parcel of it to have anything like we have capitalism today, and just kind of get them out of that kind of Adam Smith idyllic idea of how things could be, but for the corrosive, always wrong, scapegoated state. I just wanted to add that.
Very true. No, I don't know if you have anything to add on that, but it's he looks like Noah.
No, I'm still here. I just had to turn my camera off for a minute because I'm doing I have to do stretches sometimes for my injury. Okay. You guys don't need to.
No, it's very true. Without, and especially in the modern day, in the era of monopoly capital, I like to ask libertarians what their ideal system is. What is your ideal system? And they'll all say different things, but some of them will say like the American frontier. That's what we want to go back to. It's like, well, that shit is dead. America's run by monopolies now. You're not going to be like a rancher, small, frontier farmer. I'm sorry.
Right. And if you were, you probably would have gotten rolled by bandits or scammed out of your land by an industrialist or something else. Like,
right. That was like almost like the process of expropriation in America was monopolies pushing those people off the land, taking their means, what they used to produce, their means of subsistence, and monopolizing those, centralizing
Eddie,
those.
I hate to cut you off, but I just want to throw a shout out. If any libertarians are looking for the last frontier, brother, it's down here in Chile.
That's the last frontier now.
Nah, dude, land speculation is cringe. We just need to raise the productive forces. I mean, the libertarians, they want to raise the productive forces. They're all like entrepreneurs and trying to invent shit. And it's like, the only way you can do that is by having a planned economy that opens up space for you, like literally opens up the frontier for you to be an entrepreneur.
Precisely. That's exactly my point with them. The only way to make sure entrepreneurialism can function in an economy of any real size today is for a strong and people-focused, working class-focused state to make sure it happens, to kneecap monopolies before they can dominate entire industries, to provide sustainable growth for industries that are necessary for society, but not as profitable when we're creating on a global scale, because that's where we're at now, and to protect all entrepreneurial endeavor from the parasites of the financial class. Like the financial class, like people don't understand how brutally parasitic finance capital is. I mean, it's not even capital.
And that's what Lenin said too.
Yeah.
Lenin was talking about that.
Yeah.
And he was
Because
talking
I've
about that,
been
like,
I've been shouted out of DSA meetings for talking about finance capital, and they're like, "Oh, are you talking about the Jews?" And I'm like, "No, I'm literally talking about the banks, and I don't care what they what they are or whatever. They're just the banks."
That's crazy. That happened to me once. I got like ratioed. Thankfully now I usually doesn't happen if you tweet about finance capital. I guess people have stopped being so retarded about it, but like I got ratioed once where I made a tweet about finance capital and someone's like, I guess Eddie's openly anti-Semitic now. I'm like, it was someone with Marxist Leninist in their bio. I'm like, have you read the first fucking page of Lenin's Imperialism? There's a whole chapter in that book called Finance Capital. He goes into to great detail about what actually constitutes finance capital, which is the merger of the credit system and industrial capital.
And another point for the libertarians in terms of agreement is they hate fiat currency. And I know you could have fiat currency like under a communist system like in China, but our fiat currency is just endlessly printed for the sake of the creditor class. So they are correct about that.
It's what Kara said, like you need a state to do the MCM or to even complete the MCM circuit, or with the modern credit system, the M to M prime circuit, where they're doing like fractional reserve banking and it's like an infinite money glitch for them.
It really is. It's the creation of new debt. Even our money right now that we own is all actually debt. It's a note that is a marker for value yet to be created in a society that doesn't create enough value to keep up with the constantly escalating debt. That's why our national debt is in the trillions of dollars range, right? It's ridiculous that they try to explain this as somehow the interference of the state when it's just capital progressing into its decaying stage where it becomes its opposite. It's no longer even capital at that point, but fictitious capital, because it's all not value being created and realized, but markers on value that can never catch up to what's created.
That's actually how the banknote emerged historically, is as a way for people to know how much they owed to the bank.
Yup.
And now that's all we have is these banknotes.
And I think the scorn for the Federal Reserve that libertarians have is a real good entry point to actually talking to them.
Yeah.
Right? Because they know for a fact the Federal Reserve is screwing us. Right? And through their individualistic lens, you can make it make sense to them more that it's actually our system that led to this. And if you read Lenin's Imperialism, he shows the very first stage of this happening. We're just at a more advanced stage in our era where we're going through what I call reproletarianization, right? Damn it, I said it again.
No, I don't mean to be a dick, but you've said it 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60 times now since I told you to try to stop saying.
Nah, it's techno-feudalism. I like that too. That's
I actually hate that term.
Go for it. Dude, let's debate. Let's go.
Yes, we found a debate. Let's go, baby. I'll moderate. Go at it.
You first.
Look, it's feudalism was a specific mode of production and period of history wherein the people actually performing labor were not yet alienated from that labor, right? Where you were making the stuff you used because commodity production had not yet been generalized. Now we are getting to a point where capitalism itself is at its highest point where it can't go any further and something new is emerging. AI is really the death knell in capitalism. But we can't somehow overcome alienation without socialization of actual value in some way. The Marxist view, obviously, is that it's ownership of the means of production, right? Damn it. I said it again. But to imply there's like a new feudal class rather than monopolists simply financializing more and more and taking that into account is implying that relations of production are going back when instead they're the same as they've always been. They're just getting outmoded by the forces of production.
Yeah, but Noah, you're not going to sell books unless you have a cool new term.
Wait, have you read Techno-Feudalism?
I haven't.
Have you read it?
I haven't read it. No.
Yeah, because I need to read it too. But intuitively, I mean, I'll defend the concept how I understand it, without having read it like an idiot. But like intuitively, obviously, he's probably not saying we are back at feudalism, like feudalism proper. But I think what it means is that these technologies that we have, these computers and phones and whatever, some people use them to kind of, as Andrew Tate obnoxiously calls it, breaking out of the matrix. You can make a lot of money using the attention economy and whatever. So it's almost like you're tilling your own land or whatever, and everybody kind of starts out at the same, everybody's got a brand new account, a brand new phone, whatever, an old phone, a new account. And with that, you could make it big. You could be the next Haktua girl and go, fucking make a meme coin and shit. So it's like, sorry, I don't know if I can cuss on YouTube.
But you're fine. I've been cussing all night, brother. Okay,
but so that's kind of the way I think of it. And obviously it's very different from feudalism, but it's this kind of like, the house always wins. Like you'll never break out of it because the platforms will own everything. And it's the WEF, you'll own nothing and be happy type of thing.
I agree with all of
it. But I like reproletarianization too. I think there should be like a dialogue between the two.
I have a sort of the concept of where we are now, I call the limbo of the reproletariat, right? Where these people are stuck falling out of the middle classes. All of these technological jobs are being automated by the advance of technology. The standard of living is dropping more rapidly than ever. And they're thrust into this role where they're reproducing a form of society that's increasingly becoming apparent to them as obsolete. But at the same time, they still have this middle-class social consciousness, right? And they're still feeling entitled to this office job where they do something creative and they're a special snowflake, etc. And so this limbo thrusts them into the only thing they can do, which is the new servant role, right? The service industry, they call it. Basically, getting careers at Starbucks and Wendy's and things like that are already technologically obsolete. All those jobs could be replaced with computers now, touch screens.
Also, the gig economy too.
Well,
where people are basically digital slaves.
Oh, 100%. That's part of it. But this can only last for so long. It's a limbo that they're stuck in. Nothing is actually being produced. They're only used socially. They're not even creating value anymore, like the proletariat does, right? They're used socially as debt markers and stock value signals, right? The consumption, which is why, giant corporations like Walmart, for instance, are the biggest lobbyers for more state welfare because it allows them to pay less and have the rest of the working class subsidize that wage, basically, and continue consumption, which continues a stock signal that is relatively high for speculation purposes. Like it's
how do you think? I have a question for you. How do you think
if I
the
could
ruling
jump in
class
here,
is going to try?
I actually know. Okay, sorry. I just when I can, I want to jump in on neo-feudalism before you guys switch to a different topic. So let me know.
Sure.
Yeah, go for it.
Right after this, go ahead for Wiki.
Oh, you can go ahead.
Okay. Well, so Real
let
quick,
Tara go,
I just
Noah.
want to say
Noah,
the
let
only
Tara
way
go.
out for the
Noah.
proletariat.
Noah, let Tara go.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead, Tara.
Is there a delay?
It's okay. I'm gonna be American too. Like, let me speak, man. Anyway, no.
I'm sorry,
let her
Tara. I
hydrate
didn't
for a
use
minute.
my privilege.
And I'll share. First of all, I'll share an article because Jody Dean wrote something in the Los Angeles Review of Books before Varoufakis came out with his thing, and the idea, I think it's interesting to engage with because we get locked in this notion that it's going to take a while. There's going to be ups and downs, but out of capitalism, socialism will emerge. And it's the idea that what if capitalism was just the negation of feudalism? And the negation of the negation is going to be some sort of neo-feudalism, some sort of more highly developed or technological developed that. And she focuses on 4 features, which she calls parcellated sovereignty, new lords and peasants, hinterlandization, and catastrophism. Yeah. And so it's this idea, and I'll just try to be really quick because I'll share the article with you guys, and maybe she'll come on and talk to you. It'd be interesting. But this idea that we've gotten to a point of heightened centralization with maybe state capitalism, and now with neoliberalism, and the end point of that, we're actually getting to a kind of a parcellated sovereignty. You even hear talks of like Yarvin about like company towns, like a totally privatized townships and whatnot. And so looking at what's going on with sovereignty, especially economic sovereignty, and the new lords and peasants is the idea that, if you think about, it's not the same thing, but the idea that we'll use digital platforms as an example. It's like, not only do you have to pay like a certain TIF or a certain section of whatever you do through these platforms to be able to do whatever we're doing, but also then they get to harvest your data. So this kind of new lords and peasants thing that they play with. And then the third thing is the hinterlandization. And so, a great example of this, the prime example has always been the city and the countryside. But also with technology the way we have now, you can even think of like what's going on in the Congo with Cobalt and Tesla as being kind of a hinterlandization. And when Elon Musk bangs on about how, why are people attacking Tesla? We're just this lovely company who just wants to make electric cars and save the planet. And of course, if you look at all the things that have to go in that are off to the hinterland, like even the Congo, other places, that those kinds of economic relations. The last thing is the catastrophism. And I'm not really sure what that one brings, but it's just kind of, all this looming sense of insecurity and one catastrophe after the other, and this kind of looking back to wanting to have these kind of, a lord to protect us, even if it's going to be under precarious situations. And the idea that through this kind of negation of the original feudalism that capitalism may end up of being, you come back with maybe what's the idea that the idea that was it better was being a proletariat better than being a serf? Maybe we'll go back, and the idea that the worst thing than being not being a proletariat, or like the better option is being some sort of serf. But anyway, those are the 3 things that she looks at as the possibility. But how I summarize it kind of at a meta level is the idea of thinking about the possibility that what we could be ending up with, or what's coming birthed out of capitalism, is not socialism, but some sort of a higher developed neo-feudalism, and that will be, and that capitalism is just kind of the blip to get us back to that. But I'm not saying I think it's interesting, but anyway, I'll share her article. It's easier to read and it's shorter than Varoufakis's book.
Yeah.
Was it called? It was called 4 Futures.
No, it's called, let's see, the article that it's Neo-Feudalism, the End of Capitalism, ? Jody Dean considers what comes after capitalism.
Because there's a book called 4 Futures by Peter Fraze, and he has pretty similar.
This is by Jody Dean. I think she also has a book out on this now. Like this is the new thing that people are chewing on. On the more philosophical end is the idea that maybe we have to disabuse ourselves of the possibility that even though the road to socialism out of capitalism is a lot of ins and outs and what have yous and ups and downs, as the dude in Big Lebowski would say, what if what's materializing now, for lack of a better word, is some sort of neo-feudalism, which of course It's only slightly related to what happened in in before capitalism. But I'll
So
share with you it came out in 2020.
yeah, please link that
Where should I
for
get it?
us.
Should I
That
send it
sounds
to you, Noah, or
interesting.
should I just add it to this chat or what?
Just add it to the chat.
Yeah,
That's
maybe
fine.
reply to the space with it.
Look, it
Okay,
sounds
cool. Thanks, guys. I'm
interesting.
gonna mute now and give the floor to somebody else.
Sweet, thank you,
Awesome.
Tara.
Yeah, we'll get to the last speaker. I want to comment on this real quick. I haven't read this, but I have an idea of how we're going to look at it. There's a two things that she has to be forgetting in order to arrive at this conclusion. One, class struggle is objective. It's happening even when we're not aware of it. It's a social reflection. So like to deny that is to sort of believe in the Nietzschean like will and all that nonsense, the individualist view of how we act. And two, communism is already an ongoing universal process, already happening. I mean, at one point in time, a fifth of the world was communist. Right now, I think how many people is it that live in communist countries? We include China, and it's a giant proportion of the world, right? And more countries are trending towards that way. As conditions get worse, you see, no matter where it is, people begin to radicalize. And so you look for a way to make sense of what's happening around you. And the only explanation is Marxism. And therefore, that as long as there's working classes, not even just the proletariat, I'm including this, my notion of the reproletariat in here, there's some kind of guide towards some more communist future. Anyway, bring up unless you have something to add, Eddie.
It's interesting for me to think about because this is what a lot of my writing is focused on, and research is focused on recently, is basically just looking at the development of the credit system and the stock market even, and this transformation into the era of like finance capital and neoliberalism. And the more I look at it, the more I feel like it is going to sublate itself into socialism with a working class revolution, and it's like inevitable. I got to read that article because it's really interesting, and it's right in the pocket of like what I've been researching and talking about, and it goes against what I see. But
hey guys, I just want to say, because you didn't see it, Eddie, I put it in I DM'd you and I DM'd Noah, and I edited it to a comment on the space.
Sweet.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. I think that as capitalism evolves, I think Noah's theory of reproletarianization is right. It throws people into or it automates their jobs away, throws them into chaos, and conditions are getting increasingly worse because of the development of finance capital. And you have this disaster for the United States, which is exactly what they were trying to avoid when the Soviet Union was in the Stalin era, where China is out competing us by almost every metric. Their people are living better. They're raising their people out of poverty, and they're surpassing American corporations in every industry. In electric cars, they recently made these huge gains and are out competing Tesla. In AI and all these things, and they're a result of the fact that China has a planned mode of production, that they've overcome capitalist relations of production and the fetter that they put on production. So this is also going to elevate people's consciousness. This is why we got like the New Deal and all these like social democratic policies in the U.S. are a major reason why, because of competition with the Soviet Union. What would it look like to American workers if the Soviet citizens were living better? And that's why it was such a devastating blow for socialists. And I think this is what produced a lot of these sort of theories that try to go in other directions and look to where Marx was wrong, or where maybe Marx was assuming things would happen that didn't end up happening, because the collapse of the Soviet Union was such an L for the global working class and the global socialist Marxist Leninist movement. But now with China, reestablishing Marxism, Leninism on the global stage, I think we're going to see sort of a recalibration where people realize that, Marx's predictions weren't as off as some people have been led to believe. But I'm excited to read the article. I think we have a libertarian in here. Christopher, you're a voluntarist, right?
Correct.
You go next.
Thank you. I don't know what I am really. I, as you said before, I think a lot of libertarians would say that I'm not a libertarian, but I don't know what the correct term for me would be to describe myself. I'm against many things. I think I would like to prohibit a lot of things normal libertarians would not, things as abortion, euthanasia, etc. So a lot of people calling themselves that would call me, I think, conservative. I don't know. But I'd actually like
that
to
you
ask
need a license to drive a car?
Yes.
Okay. I was just referencing that famous libertarian debate meme.
Maybe I think it's okay to debate the age of driver's license. But of course, you should need a driver's license to drive on the road. If not, you could say that if the road should be privately owned, the so-called private owner would, I think, he would instate some kind of legal age to drive a car.
Very true.
But I'd ask you, y'all are Marxists, right?
Yes.
But like this is like the MAGA communism type, like the more conservative type. Am I correct?
So we would say that the liberal type is not Marxism at all.
But I think that is very interesting because when you read Marx, like some of his like cultural beliefs, I think you must be aware of the term cultural Marxism, which I will guess that you oppose.
Yes.
But at the
we'd say
as
it's
far as I
not
know,
Marxism at all.
As far as I know, Marx, he wrote in his I don't know if it was the Communist Manifesto or his Capital, that he believes in the abolition of both family and religion. And
no, he did not.
Didn't he?
For real? Let me just. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, brother. Usually,
no. Answer,
let you
please.
finish. We're just like running up on the end of our stream for the night. Nettie and I both have a meeting we have to get to right after this. So I just want to, because there's a few ways we can come at this. I want to give you an example that how this is a distortion. There's a quote from Marx that is often used to say that he hated religion. When they say he calls it the opium of the masses, right?
Yes.
This is from a paper he wrote called The Critique of Hegel's Philosophy of Right. And he begins by criticizing what he calls religious criticism. And what he means by that is all philosophy and criticism and theory at the time had originated in the church because they were the only literate ones, right?
Okay.
And it therefore took on a very religious overtone. It had to end in certain dogmas that could never be explored, right? Certain things were whatever. And so what he advocates instead is what he calls an irreligious criticism, or a criticism that is more scientifically grounded. And the specific quote is actually taken out of context and isn't a condemnation of religion at all. He actually says that it is, here, let me pull it up real quick. Marx critique of, there it is. I'm getting to it. I apologize. Jesus. Why won't it do it? Okay. I'm going to it right now. Control F, and we'll go opium to find it. All right, he says, religious suffering is at one and the same time the expression of real suffering and a protest against real suffering. Religion is the sigh of the oppressed creature, the heart of a heartless world, and the soul of soulless conditions. It is the opium of the people. So what he's saying is that life itself is hard, and people sort of use religion in order to comfort themselves from those harsh conditions. And at the same time, because people sort of retreat into their religion, it can sort of create a lack of will to combat those poor conditions that continue their suffering. So he wasn't against religion at all. He was instead trying to understand how religion developed and how society uses it.
But at least there have to be some opposition to like institutional religion, because if you look at countries like Albania and China, I know that if you're a member of the Chinese Communist Party, you have to be atheist. Isn't that correct?
Yes and no.
That's not strictly enforced, though. Actually, that it's technically a rule, but they don't. There are religious members. You're just not allowed to like come to a party meeting and start sermonizing to everybody and tell them why they need to go to church.
And that's strictly for party members. And really, it was in America. Actually, most of our old Communist Party's leaders were Christian. And we've always had a very strong connection to churches locally. The new reconstituted American Communist Party, maybe half our leadership is religious, various types. But in China, for instance, you're only talking about rules to be in the party. They've built more mosques, for instance, than any other country on earth. In the Soviet Union, Stalin reconstituted the Orthodox Church because it was something that had a connection for the peasantry specifically. So like a lot of it is just kind of, yes, there are kernels of truth, but those kernels of truth get distorted. Kind of like the way that opium of the people quote gets kind of put out of its context, and we get given an opposite meaning for it.
But would you agree that there's difference between like philosophical Marxism and like Marxism in practice? So the original Marxism, or at least Leninism, had to be some kind against religion. So you can't be like Marxist and religious, isn't that right?
No, you can't. Marxism. So that's kind of like a view on categories, right? Marxism is a worldview. And some of the best Marxists I know are also religious people. For them, the progress of society is also the progress of man's relationship with the divine, right? But in Lenin's day in Russia, you have to know that the old Orthodox Church, before it was remade during the Soviet era in the 30s, was being used against the people. It was sort of a tool of the czars to keep people in their place and being used to sort of enrich the czars at the expense of the people. So it became a tool of the ruling class. So a lot of people had a really bad taste in their mouth about the church specifically. But from Orthodox Christians I know that live in Russia, they would say that that church was corrupt, right? That saying the czars were appointed by God to send their children to die in wars to make the czars richer was blasphemy, right? So, I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. Unfortunately, this has to be our last thing because we're really over time now. But Sebastian, you had something you wanted to add, right?
No, it's for us after.
Oh, okay.
Well, thank you, everybody. Hey, everybody who's on the space right now, Thank you for hanging out. Timmy, Too Fast, Too Furious, I believe is her ad, is doing a space soon with ACP members talking to truckers. I recommend everybody join that if you want to keep hanging out and talking. It's going to be interesting. I'm going to hop on for a little bit. There was recently a thing in Iowa where Iowa politicians are pushing this idea that we have a driver shortage, which is actually a way to flood the labor supply in the market and drive down their rates and wages. So especially with me being a communist based in Iowa, I want to be there to talk about that. So it should be an interesting space. That's why I recommend you go after this if you want more education for your brain.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody who had questions, all that. Especially our last guy. Those were great questions. We're gonna switch. We used to do this on Discord, but I think we're gonna switch. We might switch over to X Spaces every week now. So we do these every single Monday at 6 Eastern, and it goes till around 8 Eastern. So come on back next week and hop on up if you got something to say. I'm going to end the space now. Thank you, everybody.
Also, one sec before you end it.
Yeah, sure.
Anthony's in as a speaker. We'll just try to keep note of you and get you in as a caller early if you call in next week.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks, guys. I've been a long time. I've kind of checked you guys out throughout the years. Eddie, I'm like a super big fan. Just real quick, I used to actually partake in Tara's podcast, but I kind of dropped out because just the mental stuff within late capitalism. Maybe I had to, you know what I mean? I had to kind of like get my own mental together. But I do have, some questions because like ACP seems dope. Don't get me wrong, and I'm definitely a fucking communist for a litany of fucking reasons that I guess I'll maybe describe in the next space. But like, I'd love to, I'll come on next time because I definitely want to check you guys out more.
Awesome.
Absolutely. We'd love to chat.
Definitely, brother. All right. Well, thank you guys. And we will see you next week. If you're watching the stream, stick around because we're going to read the super chats and then we'll call it a night. All right. The stream or the space is done. Let's get these super chats. Tennessee with the 2. Thank you, brother. Guys, BlackRock on the WE.
Good. We did. Marx failed to consider that one.
Yeah. I don't know what argument you're talking about, long guy. If you're talking about yours, yes. The one in your previous thing.
Yeah, I think
absolutely. He's thanking you for translating his last comment.
I got you, brother.
Dude, long guy, you are too much tonight. Thank you, brother. Funny, libs don't want you to say finance capital because their old hero, Justice Louis Brandeis, wrote Other People's Money and How the Bankers Use It in 1914. Libs, honestly, they don't think deeply about these things, right? They hear something and assume it's correct, and it's a way for them to feel morally righteous and superior, so they never question it, ever. And that's just how it is. They heard, oh, that's an anti-Semitic trope, and they just stick with it. And
it's like that Jackson thing with the OK symbol.
Exactly. Exactly. I was like, what is she talking about? White supremacist hand sign. It was ridiculous. All right, fellas.
Literal emoji.
All right, everybody in the audience. Thank you for another great Noah show.
Thank you for the super chats.
Thank you for the super chats. Thank you for all your questions. Thank you, Eddie, for hanging out with us tonight. And thank you, Sebastian, for making me not go insane. We'll see all y'all next week.
See you, everybody. Thank
you, everybody.
Stand up, all victims of oppression, for the tyrants fear your might. Don't cling so hard to your possessions, for you have nothing if you have no right. Let racist ignorance be ended, for respect makes the empires fall. Freedom is merely privilege extended, unless enjoyed by one and all. So come, brothers and sisters, for the struggle carries on. The International unites the world in the song. So comrades, come rally. Come greet the dawn and stand beside us. We'll live together or we'll die alone. In our world poisoned by exploitation, those who have taken, now they must give. And end the vanity of nations, we've but one earth on which to live. So come brothers and sisters, for the struggle carries on. The International unites the world in the song. So comrades, come rally, for this is the time and place. The international ideal unites the human race. And so begins the final drama, in the streets and in the fields. We stand unbowed before their armor, we defy their guns and shields. When we fight, provoked by their aggression, let us be inspired by life and love. For though they offer us concessions, change will not come from above. So come brothers and sisters,